Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well and staying safe. In today's video, we are going to be talking about WebdriverIO Expect Assertion. I'm going to tell you what it is, demonstrate how you can use it, as well as how it compares to Chai. I'll also show how you can add it to your project along with Chai if it is that you were already using Chai for your WebdriverIO project. I'll also share my thoughts on why I prefer WebdriverIO Expect Assertion over Chai Assertion that I have been using for a long time. Let's get started. The WebdriverIO test runner comes with a built-in assertion library, and this allows you to make powerful assertions on the browser level or on elements that you want to assert. It extends just matches, so you have additional functionality. For example, if you want to check that a button is displayed, if you want to check that the button exists, that sort of thing, then you can do so with WebdriverIO Expect. It has a lot of different commands that we are going to go through a few of them. It also has network matches, and this allows you to check that a mock was called. So you pass in what the mock is. WebdriverIO has a mock module that you can check out, and you can use that along with expect to verify that what you're expecting to be mocked has been mocked. In addition to the commands that you see here for Expect WebdriverIO, you can use just Expect Assertions, or you can use Expect or Expect Async for Jasmine. Now, there are some default options that WebdriverIO provides you with in terms of timeout and wait for interval options. These are automatically added from the WebdriverIO config file, so you don't necessarily have to add those to your expect assertions, but you can if you want to. There are also matcher options, and each matcher can take several options that you can modify based on the assertion. We're going to go through a couple of these. So you have the command options, which would be the wait and the interval, and if it is that you want to add a message, you have string options that talks about ignoring case, trim, check if something is containing, and we'll do the ignore case and containing later on in this video. These matches are looking for a boolean, so you're going to say true if you want it to ignore case, or false if you don't want it to ignore case. So it tells you what the details of those are, and I'll walk you through some examples of using that later. There are also number options, and these options you add them similarly to how you would add the string options above. You write equal to mean equal, and less than and greater than. So these are matcher options that you can add to WebdriverIO Expect to do additional functionality for you. So let's quickly set up our project and check out the WebdriverIO Expect. We're going to do that by initializing npm init-y that accepts all of the presets. Then we're going to say npm I WebdriverIO. This is going to install WebdriverIO for you. Once we have done that, then we are going to say npm I at wdio/CLI. This installs the WebdriverIO client interface. The CLI allows you to set up WebdriverIO config, and you do that by running the command, and you say -y, and this is going to accept all of the default settings, which just includes Chrome and Chrome driver. I personally prefer to use Selenium standalone as it allows me to just quickly set up other browsers, but that's not the purpose of this video. So we just check our package JSON. We see that we're using the Mocha framework and we are using WebdriverIO version 7. The default WebdriverIO setup comes along with it a test that is going to log into the Internet Heroku app, and we can see that URL in our page object. So it's going to log in there, and the test that we have set up is a login test. It's currently set up to be using the WebdriverIO Expect, and it is using the to be existing and to have text containing, and we'll go over what those are specifically in a minute. But this is how the WebdriverIO Expect looks, and we can run our test by using the command that they gave us after we set up our project. And once we enter that command, we see that our test runs. It logs into the browser and we see the success message. If we change the text that we are asserting against and rerun our test, then it should fail, as it should not have that specific text contained in what we're getting back. So it fails because it had additional things that was not retrieved when we did our assertion. Now, there are different browser matchers that you can use. You can use to have URL, to have URL containing, to have title, or to have title containing. Let's copy the have URL command and put that in our test. We're going to check that once it is we log in, the URL that it navigates to is the correct URL. So we're going to fix back our first expect assertion just to ensure that passes. Then we say expect browser to have URL, and we are going to go to the Internet Heroku app, and when we log in, the URL changes to secure. So we can say the internetherokuapp.com/secure. Once we do that and run our test, it should pass as we are logging in and we're going to the secure URL. We can do to have URL containing, and this is going to be similar to the to have URL command, but you don't need to enter the full URL. So we can just say secure. If we run this test again, then it will pass. We can also do to have title. So if we go to the particular page, the secure URL page, and we right click, we inspect, and we close that and we go into our head, then we should see the title says the internet. So we can go ahead in our test, use the to have title command by saying expect browser to have title, and we pass in the title that we're expecting, which is the internet. We run our test again and it passes. Now we can also do to have title containing, and that's just checking that it contains some text. These are the 4 different browser matchers that WebdriverIO Expect provides you with. Let's take a look at some other commands. We have been using the to be existing and to have text containing. These are element matchers, and the to be existing is the same as to exist. We also have to have text containing, and that command just check if the element contains a specific text. What we can do is change that long text to say secure, and if we do that, we realize we're using uppercase. If we run that test, it will fail because the secure that is coming back from the test is lowercase. but the secure that we're checking it against is in uppercase. So this would be a good time to use a string option if it is that you want it to ignore case. And you use that string option by saying open curly brace, what the string option is, in this case ignore case, and you put in a boolean. So true if you want it to ignore case, false if you don't. So we enter that, and if we run our test again, it should pass because it is ignoring the case that we have in, and it is converting both cases to lowercase. Now we can use the containing string option. Instead of saying to have text containing, we could possibly use to have text command. Now this is kind of not necessary, but it's just to show you an example. So if we run our test to say to have text, it will fail because it's looking for the entire text to match what we have there, but we only have a partial text. So we can change it to add the string matcher containing and put true. So therefore it's going to change it really to say to have text containing. There are other options that you can use, and they would all be added into your assertion in the same way. The next command we're going to check out is the to be enabled. So if we go to dynamic controls, we click on enable, it enables the field. And then if we click disable, it disables the field. So we're going to run test on this and use WebdriverIO Expect Assertion to assert that the field is disabled and enabled respectively. So we have the button and we're waiting for it to be displayed, and we're clicking on it. Once that is done, we're using the wait for enabled command, and we have a timeout of 4,000 milliseconds. Then we need to have some expect. This is our assertion, so we are going to use to be enabled. So when we say expect and we put in our element, as this is an element matcher, we are going to say expect the enabled field to be enabled. We also see here that we can use expect element to not be disabled, and it would mean the same thing as to be enabled. So we can just add that in there as a demonstration that you can use either way, to be enabled or to not be disabled. And we're using the same locator, so the input enabled field locator. We can then just do to be disabled on the second test, as it's going to check that the field is disabled after we click the button again. So right here I'm using npm test. I changed the command and I just put WDIO in my package JSON so that it's easier for me to run my test. Then I call a specific test, as I now have more than one test and I don't want to run all of them. I just want to run this specific one. So I say minus minus space minus minus spec, and I put the path to the test. If I run this test, I see where it clicks the button, it waits for it to be enabled, then it's asserting that the field is enabled, clicks back the button, and then wait for it to be disabled. And so it passes. So we can use the to be enabled matcher, as well as not to be disabled or to be disabled matcher, and these would all work. Let's look at the to have attribute containing matcher. This matcher allows you to pass in two values, the attribute and the value that you're expecting it to have. And so if we inspect here, we see that the enable button has some attributes. It has onclick, it has autocomplete equal off. We're going to check for the autocomplete equal off. So we just take the element, say to have attribute containing, and we pass in the attribute and the expected value. When we run our test, it passes. It's checking that there is some attribute on this enable button called autocomplete, and it has a value of off. The to have value checks that an input element has a certain value. Now we have used to have text before, and that is on a text field. I have a video where I compare text versus value and how you use them. So if we go to a logging field and we inspect that, we'll see that it's an input, and therefore to get the text on that, you'll have to use to have value. If you're doing the H2, the logging page, etc., then you can use to have text, as that will be on a text element and it will work. So just a refresher there. Let's take a quick look on to have href containing. Now this just checks that the link element contains a specific text. Like we have our footer here and it contains elemental selenium. So we can check that this link here contains the word elemental. So we are going to create the page object for the page footer. We're going to say expect that page footer to have a href containing elemental. That's our locator. If we go ahead and run our test, it should work because we're checking for that specific link and we're saying it should have elemental in its href. Now there are several other matches that you can use. You can use to have ID, to have text, to have text containing that we've shown before, and to have ID, you just put in the ID that you're expecting it to have. You can use to be displayed in viewport, to be visible in viewport, which is the same thing. To have children, there is a lot of matches that expect by WebdriverIO provides you with, and that's what I love about it. It gives you so many different options and it's really intuitive and easy to use. Let's switch gears for a bit and talk about ChaiJS. ChaiJS is an assertion library that is really popular for JavaScript frameworks. It can be used in almost any JavaScript framework really. I have used it a lot in my WebdriverIO automation. It's really simple to install. You say npm install chai and it contains a lot of valuable assertions that you can use. It has 3 different interfaces that you can use. So you can say should, you can say expect, or you can say assert. Should and expect are really similar as they provide a chain type of assertion, while assert is a bit different. You can visit each individual assertion guide and it breaks down and tells you further about the different things that you can use, whether it is you're using should, so therefore you can do should dot not dot to be, for example. Same thing with expect, and then assert is similar to how WebdriverIO was doing its expect command. You can read through the guide to get a better understanding of the different commands that are there and how you can use them. This is one of the things that I think the WebdriverIO expect assertion wins. It's just straightforward and simple. There's one way to do things, and the documentation is so much better in my opinion. It allows me to see examples of how I can use each and every single command that is there. With Chai, a lot of times I stuck to using the assert because it was more straightforward for me to use, because I didn't have to do the chain. I didn't know all of the chain commands. With WebdriverIO Expect, you don't need to know all of that. It just provides you with the command, a very extensive list of commands that you can use. And once it is you click on those commands, it gives you examples. It tells you what it's for, how you can use it, different ways that you can use these commands, and it's just really straightforward. We're going to now add Chai to our project that we already have by saying npm I Chai, and this is going to install the Chai package along with the 3 different interfaces that we just talked about. If I go into my package.json, I'll see that. I can also then install npm chai-webdriver.io, and this is a module that helps to combine WebdriverIO and Chai. In our WebdriverIO config, we're going to put in our before test the requirements for Chai so that we can use the global assert and global expect command. So we're going to require Chai WebdriverIO, and then say use Chai WebdriverIO in the browser. And whenever we use the keyword assert globally or expect, they're now going to be calling Chai assert and Chai expect respectively. In the test that we had before, it was using WebdriverIO Expect Assertion. So I'm going to comment that out for now, and I'm going to put that same thing down below, and I'm going to convert all of those WebdriverIO assertions into Chai assertions. So instead of saying expect secure page to be existing, I would need to say assert.equal, pass in what I'm asserting it to equal to, which in this case is true, and I would need to do the isExisting command on the locator. The isExisting command is a WebdriverIO command that just returns true or false based on if the element is present in the DOM. Now, to be existing for WebdriverIO, this was pretty simple as it was already calling the to exist command for you. So I didn't need to call that on the command because it just calls isExisting on its own. But when I'm using Chai, I need to call isExisting for myself. So I need to say element locator dot isExisting, and it's going to return true or false to me. With WebdriverIO Expect, I don't need to do any of that. It would just automatically check for me and call the isExisting function. So that's a slight difference between both. The Chai, you have to do the calls to return whether or not it's true or false. You need to do the isExisting, isDisplayed, etc. based on what assertions you're using. With WebdriverIO Expect, you don't need to do any of that. It's going to call it for you. So in my test here, I'm going to say assert.equal, and that is me using the assert method, passing true, and then I call isExisting on the locator. I can also do something similar for the next function. So instead of saying to have text containing, I would have to get the text and then verify that the text is included in what I got back. So for Chai, I would have to say assert.include, which is something that checks for text to be included or contained, and I would say get text. So instead of saying to have text containing, because to have text containing would automatically check get text for me, I have to do it for myself, and I would have to do that against the value that I am expecting to be returned. So for WebdriverIO, I could use to have text or to have text containing. For the third command here, where we're checking if the URL is equal to what we assumed, we can do that in Chai by doing a get URL, and the get URL is going to return the URL for the page that you're on, and we're going to have to say assert.equal the URL we're expecting, and then we're going to have to do the WebdriverIO command browser.getURL. This is going to get the URL and compare it to the value that is on the left. And if we run our test, it passes. This is just another way of writing assertions using Chai. You could have used the expect Chai assertion or the should expect assertion. As I'm putting here, this is using the should, but it's a chain command, and I personally prefer to use the assert if I'm doing Chai. What I like about WebdriverIO, as I said before, it's more intuitive, and I don't have to do all of those commands to get text on my own, get URL on my own, etc. I can just use a command and it will do that for me. So on the screen right now, you should be seeing assertions using the should, and the expect assertion is similar to the should, so you can format that to be similar. If it is that you want to use WebdriverIO Expect along with Chai in your project, say that you were using Chai in your project all along and you want to now start using WebdriverIO Expect Assertion and you want to do it slowly, you just need to require expect WebdriverIO and create the global expect. So you need to do this at the very start. because WebdriverIO is going to come with the global expect being for the WebdriverIO expect package. And we're going to store that into a new variable called WDIO expect. So wherever we want to use WebdriverIO expect, we have to use that command. And so the test that we commented out before, we can just go in and change that out to WDIO expect, and our tests should all now pass because we're using both WebdriverIO expect and we're using the different Chai assertions as well. This is our final test. We can see where we are using both Chai and WebdriverIO assertions. For the WebdriverIO assertions, it's more straightforward. You can just say to have URL, to have URL containing, to have title. For the Chai assert, we have to make a call to say get text or get URL in order to do the assertion on it. So we can use Chai assert, Chai expect, or Chai should. I personally now prefer using WebdriverIO Expect Assertion. I love the documentation and I love the way I can just make my calls, and they're pretty straightforward, and the naming convention of them tells you exactly what it's about. This is it for this video. Let me know in the comments below which one you prefer. If you have tried out WebdriverIO Expect Assertion, let me know if you use Chai, and when you use Chai, which one of the assertions do you use? I normally use the assert because I find it easier. Let me know if you use the should or the expect. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you in the next one.